Well, hello there, and welcome to the Trending Now podcast for a Friday, September the 29th, 2023. Thank you for joining us today. I'm your host, Louie Butko, and if you are here for the first time, a very special welcome to you. Here on the show, we recap everything you may have missed on Trending Now, which you catch Monday to Friday, 7 p.m. here on CHCH. But before we start, September 30th is the National Day for Truth and Reconciliation. We acknowledge that we, CHCH, here on Innovation Drive, are within the treaty lands and territory of the Mississaugas of the First Nation. As part of the city of Hamilton, we are also situated among the traditional shores of the Neutral and Haudenosaunee land, which is now home to many diverse First Nations, Inuit, and Métis people. We thank the Mississaugas of the Credit and our First Nations neighbors for sharing this land with us, and we commit ourselves to listening, learning, celebrating, and developing respectful and meaningful relationships with one another. We'll have more on tomorrow's National Day for Truth and Reconciliation and more, including Speaker of the House Anthony Rota announcing his resignation after taking sole responsibility for inviting and acknowledging a Ukrainian member of a volunteer Nazi Waffen-SS unit. A federal judge in New York rules former U.S. President Donald Trump and his adult sons defrauded banks and insurers while building his real estate empire. Meanwhile, holding a commanding lead in the race, Trump was a no-show at the second Republican presidential debate this week in California, and a sad week in the world of Hollywood as two iconic performers pass away. All that and more coming up on the Trending Now podcast. But before that, I want to get us started with our Trending Now producer this week. It's Emily Tayler.
Hi, thank you for having me.
Absolutely. Okay, we have to be clear. This is not your first time on the show.
No, second time.
You have been a reporter on Trending Now. Have you hosted Trending Now yet?
No, never.
Okay.
That's the job I'm gunning for next, I think.
I think so. To fill in for Matt when he eventually has to take some sort of paternity leave.
Exactly. It's inevitable at this point.
It's inevitable. But you're filling in for Laura Sabin, and you've done a lot here in the building. You know, I joke I'm a Louie of all trades. You are an Emily of all trades.
Thank you.
Having anchored, having reported, now you're producing.
Triple threat.
What's the biggest jump? What's the biggest difference? Like when you were learning from Laura this week, who is enjoying a well-deserved vacation in Italy soon. It is her birthday as well today.
It's her birthday today. I was going to give her a little shout out. Yeah.
Happy birthday, producer Laura Sabin, who I know is listening to the show, probably downloaded it for the plane ride, probably just listening to it on repeat, and is going to have a whole bunch of notes. But the thing we appreciate about Laura is just like she's got a lot going on in the day.
Yes. Oh my goodness. I was working as a writer actually when I very first started at CH. So I filled in like lineup editor, writing for broadcast, for the web, all that kind of stuff. So the actual writing isn't that big of a leap. It's the million little things that she does to get the show all prepped, right? I've never had to input like cameras or readers or make sure that we're all timed out correctly or things like that. That are so vital to the show running. I'm trying to get it. We'll see today how it goes. Yesterday, she was still here to watch over me, so.
Tune in, 7 o'clock, Friday night show. You'll want to catch it. You seem like the kind of person who knew they wanted to be a journalist early. Is that true? No.
Not at all, actually.
You seem such a natural at the journalist thing. I feel like you were.
That.
Yeah, I just feel like you were like a 6-year-old kid, like writing like a paper like at home, but that's not the case.
You know, I always wanted to be a writer of some sort. I didn't really come to journalism until mid-university, but when I was a kid, I would have so many notebooks full of lists that my mom used to joke I had like a list of my lists.
Okay.
She would just buy me a new notebook. I don't even know what I was writing about. What 6-year-old needs to list things out? I don't know.
Yeah.
But I wasn't until midway through university. I was trying to figure out what I wanted to do, and I went into my student newspaper. And I mean, shout out Western Gazette.
There you go.
I love them. And then I stuck around. I was their editor-in-chief for a year also. But that means my actual training is in web and print. I didn't have any broadcast training coming to CH. That's why, started as a writer, worked my way on camera. Here we are, taking over producing.
Yeah, I mean, really, because you have been here. How long have you been at CHC?
About 2.5 years, just over. Yeah.
And it's, I have to give you credit. We were just talking before we came in here. I'm going to give you credit for a lot, but I was watching your Monday hit from Queen's Park.
Oh my goodness.
And like when you like think about, you're no longer on Morning Live, but you think about your first day on Morning Live and maybe how nervous you would have been doing that live. What do you mean I have to talk for 60 seconds? Like, what do you mean? Like, there's no like prompter in front of me. Like, there's no clip I can throw to in case things go wrong.
I just have to memorize it.
Yeah. I mean, like how did Morning Live help you become the person who now, like, you think about, like, Emily Tayler coming in as a little writer, being told tomorrow you need to produce this show. Probably a bit overwhelming. Even this week, probably a bit overwhelming.
Just a little.
But how did that experience on Morning Live help you get to the position you are now?
Yeah, Morning Live was so immensely helpful. Honestly, I worked about 6 months or so part-time, mostly like weekends some days, and then I was on Morning Live after that. So most of my CH career I've been on Morning Live, and it made me so much faster, namely, and also just way more comfortable on camera, right? I just said I came into CH with no on-camera experience, spare some like little videos that we made at my student newspaper. And it forces you to react on your feet really quickly. If things go wrong, you're like, okay, we're just going to keep rolling with it. I can't be like, no, stop. Let's do that take again. Like you literally have to keep going, whether it's you who messes up the words or someone screaming behind you, because that has happened. Your clip doesn't get in time, and then you got to just make it up as you go. Whatever happens, you got to be able to react.
And that's this show. Yes. I mean, literally, we were walking from the newsroom, which is on the other side of this wall behind us here, and we're talking about like, wow, we got to react. Like, we got to fix the time here. We got to do this here. There really is that reaction in the show. And I ask everybody who comes on, I know you've been on already this show, but now that you have that perspective of what Laura does, what is it about this show that is completely unlike anything you've done before?
Oh, good question. This one is, it's different in the way it's not that traditional, like, newscast and local, and it's so much more national, international, and what is trending, what are people talking about, right? So there have been times where I'd be like, oh, this story's like super interesting to me, and then I'm like, oh, but it's like really local to Toronto or Hamilton or whatever it is, and that's not what this show is. That's not what we focus on.
No, and it really like forces you to be aware of literally everything that's going on, right? Like if you're on the 6, if you're reporting on the 6, you're focused on what's happening locally. Here, you really you got to force yourself to step back. And then at the end of the day, like, you realize how informed you are on things.
Yeah.
Like, do you find that's annoying sometimes? Like, I find that when people try to tell me the news, like, I have buddies, like, I have a buddy who will text me, be like, yo, did you see what happened? Like, did you see what this guy, like, did you see what Trudeau did? And I'm like, yes, like, I saw it.
Yes.
I saw it. And they're like, well, like, what'd you see about it? And I give them all the details.
Yeah.
It's like, I'm in news.
Yeah.
So if you've heard the story,
it's because a news reporter told you,
I've known it for 6 hours.
Yeah.
Like, if you know the story, that means I've probably known it for 6 hours, 12 hours. What are you working on today? I know it's your first day in the big chair.
Yes.
How's it going?
So far, so good. So far, we're doing well on timing.
Okay.
Knock on wood, the show's going to make it to air today, so that's my main goal.
Well, we always have the podcast. We can run the podcast in case it doesn't. We'll have to find the commercial breaks.
Always a backup.
Always a backup. So I know you're busy, so I'll let you go.
Yeah.
But thanks for doing this.
Thank you so much for having me.
Really appreciate that. Emily Tayler, and you'll be back next week.
I will. And the week after.
Okay, all right. So Emily Tayler will be back. My thanks to her for doing this. Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you, Louie.
Okay, let's get into some of those stories that were making the headlines this week, as I give my thumbs up there to Emily Tayler, who did a great job. As she's making her way out the studio. Coming up later on in the show, Matt Ingram. He's hosting, of course. He's going to be by. Lots to get into with Matt, including this story that I'm about to get into. And then later on, Manesa Dhanabalan going to be stopping by as well. But let's get into one of the biggest stories of the week. An incident that has put the global spotlight on Canada for all the wrong reasons. Canada's Parliament rising in unison to cheer and clap for a member of the Waffen SS. An embarrassing moment for our nation and a painful one for Jewish communities from coast to coast. Now, after apologizing on Monday, the man responsible for inviting Yaroslav Hunka was still facing mounting criticisms and calls for him to resign. So on Wednesday, he did. Anthony Rota announced his resignation, acknowledging his recognition of a 98-year-old Yaroslav Hunka, a Ukrainian member of a volunteer Nazi Waffen SS unit accused of war crimes caused harm. Deputy Speaker Chris Detremont took over the duties while preparations are underway to elect a new speaker. NDP leader Peter Julien, Bloc Québécois leader Yves François Blanchet also called on Trudeau to apologize, which he eventually did. And to discuss this, we bring in the host of Trending Now. That is Matt Ingram. And Matt, you said it perfectly in your piece. I repeated your words here because I thought it was the incident that put Canada on the global stage for all the wrong reasons. And we talk about the way Russian outlets picked this up. I mean, this was a big story across the globe.
It boggles the mind that in 2023 something like this could happen. And you're right. Russia jumped on it because this feeds into their narrative. They created this false narrative to justify their invasion of Ukraine, that Ukraine was essentially being run by neo-Nazis, which it isn't. But this fed into that whole narrative. And sure enough, Kremlin spokesperson Dmitry Peskov coming out the day after this happened and giving an interview, of course, talking about how Western nations don't know their history and, fascism rises here and there. And once again, it's risen in Ukraine, this total narrative of fighting Nazism, which, we all know is complete BS.
Yeah, the Prime Minister came out, said, I didn't meet with him. I had no idea on the vetting process, the screening process. I saw one tweet, I think it's Evan Scrimshaw, who's a political reporter, kind of a freelance guy. He says, that has to be true. Like, this is one of those stories that it cannot come out down the road that Trudeau did meet with him. Or Trudeau, imagine? Anthony Rota is taking full responsibility for this. And the story's likely not going to completely go away. Pierre Poilievre, I assume, will make this a centerpiece of any campaign that he runs at some point down the road. But
I thought one of our guests this week had a really good take on this. Gustavo Reimberg, he's the CEO, the head of the Hamilton Jewish Federation. We interviewed him this week, and he said, yes, it's terrible that Rota did this. Yes, the Trudeau government should also apologize, but so should every single parliamentarian in there. And he said, the whole intro to this man was he fought against the Russians. And I got to admit, that day I was covering the Zelensky thing. I was focused on Zelensky. I didn't really think too much about Yaroslav Hunka. But for Gustavo, that should have been a red flag for parliamentarians. Anyone who fought against the Russians, well, the Russians were our allies. It was a very long time ago, but let's not forget, in the Second World War, the Soviet Union and Canada were allies. So he made the point that every single parliamentarian in there, every person who stood up should apologize for this because they blindly stood up and applauded. Now, let's face it, parliamentarians stand up and applaud all the time.
Yeah.
For all kinds of things. And the whole point of Rota as the speaker is we trust this guy. The speaker's elected with the Conservatives as well. It's not just the Liberals who elected this guy. All parliamentarians vote on a speaker. So they trust him. This is just one of those incidents where, we have so many questions. How could this have happened? I understand that Rota's taking responsibility for it, but at some point you have to hope that this man, I'm pointing to the picture of him for listeners. See, I got that.
There you go.
Time.
See?
I forgot that the last time I was on.
I'm here to correct you. Our listeners and our viewers, we love them both equally.
You have to figure, you got to hope that at some point his name was run through a security check. I mean, we are talking about Parliament, but then Trudeau, when pushed on that by Poilievre a day or two later, said something about, parliamentarians have the privilege of inviting basically whoever they want. To me, that just raises more questions about, well, so wait a minute, parliamentarians can invite whoever they want to Parliament? No, I don't think this is done. I think we're going to hear a lot more about this.
Yeah. Speaking of hearing a lot more, I'm sure many people would be happy if we kind of never heard from this guy again. Like that transition?
That was good. Hello, baby.
But there you go. It's been a busy week in U.S. politics. Let's talk Donald Trump. Tuesday night, in a pretrial ruling, a New York judge found Trump and his adult sons, Don Jr., great name, Don Jr. and Eric, deceived banks, insurers, and others about his net worth for about a decade. And really, if you've been following Donald Trump for as long as he's been around, he exaggerates.
Yeah.
He, I think about the story. He had a 58-story building. Someone built one that was a bit taller. What did he do? He changed the numbers in the elevator to go to 68. So you could say he has a 68-story building.
Well, and this is nothing new because I remember listening to a great podcast from the New York Times with Maggie Haberman, who's covered him forever.
The Trump Whisperer.
The Trump Whisperer, yeah. And this was years ago, talking about this exact scheme, which essentially was, on paperwork, they would overinflate the value of their assets to get better terms for financing deals and insurance deals. And the one that really I love the most out of this, just because of the ridiculousness, the bombacity of it, he estimates Mar-a-Lago worth $600 million. Except the assessed value of Mar-a-Lago is $27 million. That's a big discrepancy.
His apartment, he says it was inflated by $200 million. He claimed it was 21,000 square feet, when in reality it was 7,000 square feet.
CNN had this great interview with one of his former vice presidents of the Trump organization, one of his organizations, one of his companies. And she said, he basically would just write in whatever he figured he could get away with.
Well, so Trump is saying that his financial statements were not fraudulent because they included what he called a worthless clause, which basically warned lenders that these statements shouldn't be relied on.
Yeah, what the judge called a worthless clause, because it was just basically like, oh yeah, here's all my documents, little clause at the bottom, but don't trust these numbers.
You can't
don't
trust
rely on these numbers.
It's significant. The judge's ruling is significant.
Definitely.
Is it not? Because
definitely.
This is a pre-trial ruling that he said, the evidence is right here. I don't need to rule on.
That's what I love. He didn't even wait for the trial to start. He said there is enough conclusive documentary evidence to say, this guy's guilty. He committed fraud. We don't need to have witnesses come in. And I think it's obviously a huge blow to the persona of Donald Trump, this uber successful businessman, a persona that he has tried to maintain despite the many mistakes and, losses in his business career.
But he is the leading nominee.
Oh, yeah.
Republican nomination.
By far, 37 percentage points up on the closest person behind him. A lot of people had talked about Ron DeSantis being the next kind of Republican leader. He's not doing very well. It's all Trump. Trump doesn't even come to this second debate, and he's by and far the leading candidate to fight Joe Biden.
There are a couple numbers that jumped out to me. Whether or not Trump is a man of faith. I think 53% of Republicans said yes. 35% said Mitt Romney or Mike Pence was a man of faith. And it's like, really? Mike Pence is known for his faith. Mitt Romney is a well-known Mormon, someone who preaches his faith quite regularly. Yeah, I don't know, man. The Trump stuff, we talk about it every week.
It blows me away, man. It's honestly, I think, our kids, not that you and I have kids, but eventually I have kids.
You have kids. Yeah.
One day they'll be in university and there'll be an option to take a course on the Trump presidency, and it will just be a wild ride.
Yeah, I'm actually starting to get worried as I look at there that my hair might eventually do that same thing. Because I was just telling Emily before we came, that's the one thing. I'm afraid to get a haircut short because it is that long now. I could probably dye it blonde and.
Halloween costume, maybe? We could do a Halloween episode on Trending Now.
We could.
We can float it.
What day is that?
Until Nicole comes. Laura's on vacation. Yeah. Nicole's not back for a few months. We can basically do whatever we want.
Let's see. We got October. So it'd be the 27th, the show. We'd dress up in costume.
All right.
Keep it. All right.
Done. All right.
Okay.
You be Trump. I'll be someone else.
Yeah. Okay. All right. Well, thanks for doing this, man. I'm going to get into that debate.
Yeah.
We got more to get to, including Manesa Dhanabalan, but thanks for making the time.
Sounds good, sir.
Really appreciate that.
All right.
Matt Ingram, my thanks to him for joining. And there he goes. Just like that. There he goes. All right. As we continue here, as mentioned, talking over each other, leveling attacks. It was a chaotic presidential primary debate in Simi Valley, California. Former New Jersey Governor Chris Christie was on the warpath, and he wasn't the only one going after Trump, as Florida Governor Ron DeSantis piled on too, as he struggles to emerge as the Republicans' top alternative to Trump after once being considered the party's best hope to dethrone the Donalds. Now, former Vice President Mike Pence chose instead to go after current President Joe Biden. Now, while some of the fury and insults were directed at each other, forcing them to fight to be heard. Now, after memorably clashing with several rivals in the last debate, entrepreneur Vivek Ramaswamy said his goal this time around was to stress his policies and positions, while former South Carolina Governor Nikki Haley looked to build on the momentum of her campaign that she received from the previous debate. But when the debate ended, none of the 7 candidates appeared to have had a breakout moment that might change the dynamic of a primary race that Donald Trump has dominated for months, despite, as we mentioned, his criminal indictments and a New York judge's ruling this week that he was guilty of fraud. Now, the latest poll numbers from Reuters Ipsos shows he is a 37 percentage points ahead of his nearest rival. And instead of debating, Trump opted to hold a rally in Detroit amid the ongoing auto workers strike, after going after Joe Biden in his remarks. Now, as we know, the winner of the Republican primary will go on to face Biden in the 2024 presidential election. To entertainment news this week that was trending. The entertainment world remembering actor David McCallum after he died this week. The 90-year-old became a teen heartthrob in the hit series The Man from U.N.C.L.E. in the 60s and later played the eccentric medical examiner in the popular show NCIS 40 years later. The Scottish-born son of 2 musicians had an acting career spanning 7 decades that dated back to his student days in the 1950s, but in recent years, you may recognize him from NCIS, where he played the role of Ducky. He caught the attention of America with his small role in the 1963 World War II classic, The Great Escape, where he was one of the prisoners of war plotting an escape. That wasn't the only sad news this week in Hollywood, as prolific Irish storyteller Michael Gambon died at the age of 82. His family confirmed the news yesterday, saying he died peacefully in hospital with his wife and son at his bedside after a bout of pneumonia. Of course, he was was well known for taking over the role of Dumbledore in the 3rd movie in the franchise after original actor Richard Harris died in 2002. And one more death to let you know about. This one happened today, trending now in the U.S. The longest-serving female senator in U.S. history has died. Dianne Feinstein is being remembered for her decades of service in government. Feinstein emerged on the national stage after a 1978 tragedy in San Francisco. After the assassinations, Feinstein was sworn in as the first female mayor of the city by the Bay. She quickly got the attention of National Democratic Party, landing on a short list of VP candidates for Walter Mondale in 1984. She made it to Washington when she won a special election in 1992 and went to the nation's capital with Barbara Boxer as California's first female senators. Now, Feinstein, known more recently for her health struggles, but of course fought until the very end and will be missed by her Senate colleagues, I'm sure, in the U.S. Senate. So a couple of deaths, which is a sad way to go into the weekend, but Dianne Feinstein dead at the age of 90. All right, before we go, we mentioned off the top, today is the National Day for Truth and Reconciliation, or Orange Shirt Day. And here to discuss that, we bring in Trending Now reporter Manesa Dhanabalan. We've got our ribbons here, and shout out to our executive producer, Sue, actually made these ribbons.
Oh.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, she made them.
Well, hi, first.
Yeah. Oh, hey, Manesa, how you doing?
These ribbons are, I don't know, she made them.
Yeah.
Well, that's so nice. Well, thank you, Sue.
Yeah. They're a nice way to remember the National Day of Truth and Reconciliation, Orange Shirt Day. You've been working on it today.
Yes, and as much as it is to commemorate and honor those innocent children who were lost to the residential school system, but this day kind of reminds everyone of. I was just speaking to somebody from the Indigenous community who was saying like they still face challenges till this day.
Yeah,
like across the nation, right? Whether it's work, whether it's education, whether it's water, like there's so many things that they still deal with that hasn't been changed. There were 94 calls to action, and only 13 so far have been.
And that, I mean, that's the point of today is, I mean, not just to, oh, it was sad, it was a sad thing that happened, but it is to commit to learning and acknowledging that what happened was terrible, was an awful part of our history, but we need to learn from our mistakes.
Yep. And that's true. And they were saying how a start is for the people who don't know the 94 calls to action is to pick up the 6-page. It's just 6 pages, right? Just to read through those and just get to know what's actually being asked, right? It's not a lot. So that's one of the things that she was mentioning, and and people are encouraged to come to those events because that's how you learn, right? They're welcome to people coming to get to know them, learn their culture, learn their stories, and make a difference, right? Yeah,
absolutely. Looking forward to your pack tonight. I know it's one of those important packs, right? That you know, I know you know our history, but it's always nice to like just get that additional insight. And I know you always do a great job when you do it. So I'm looking forward to your pack tonight.
Oh, thank you.
You wanted to talk about the big news on Monday.
Yes.
Which was that Usher. I don't like this.
Super Bowl.
I don't like okay, so I'm not a fan of this. Usher.
What?
Okay, I just dropped my IFB pack. Sorry about that. Mike in the studio. It's on the ground now. That's how it works.
See, you're excited. See, that's what happened.
Well, no,
you're excited.
I had it on the chair.
That's literally like a mic drop.
I know. It literally a mic pack drop. I'm not that. I thought it was going to be bigger than Usher.
No way.
Like, is there like a such thing?
Usher's huge.
He's not the biggest. Like, okay, what's he done lately?
Okay, well, like,
what's he done lately?
Okay.
Okay.
Why don't we think of
it? Maybe Usher 2010.
No, he's put out some, and his album's coming out the same day as Super.
Oh, what a coincidence!
So
what a coincidence.
There you go.
All right. What's your favorite Usher song?
My absolute favorite is "Yeah."
Of course. A great one.
It's like my literal takes me back to the school dances, you know, and you'd walk in and that's the opening song.
Yeah. So, because we were talking about this earlier, like we flagged this on Monday, be like, I want to talk about this on the podcast. And you were asking me like my favorite Usher songs. And I was like, yeah, is obviously up there. DJ Got Us Falling in Love Again.
Okay.
That's a good one. But like, I'm more of a Tayo Cruz guy. So like for me, like Dynamite, like you know that song?
Yes.
That song.
I remember that song too.
That song for me is like high school. Like Usher, like a little bit, but for me, like when I was thinking like Tayo Cruz was that guy.
Okay, and remember Low? Yeah. That's like the one song too.
Absolutely.
Like you
apple bottom jeans, boots with the fur,
and you always saw people like just like everyone has a group just.
Somebody got low. Actually, I don't know if I'm allowed to sing that. Well, I'm definitely somebody's probably yelling at me. I wouldn't know in the control room that I'm not allowed to sing it because you know. This is a podcast. We can't have music. We'd have to pay for the rights. So I don't know. We might have to strike that from the record.
Oh.
Mike, beautiful singing so well to the song.
Beautiful.
Yeah.
Sure. Just kidding. I'm kidding.
It's supposed to be a beautiful weekend here in our area. You got big plans?
No, I really don't.
Which is good, though.
Yeah, it is.
Because you have had plans for a very long time all summer.
Yes.
So this is kind of like a little bonus summer that you get to enjoy.
Yeah, this is my summer. And the weekend's supposed to be like, super nice,
right? I just said that.
I know.
Do you listen when you're on the show?
I listen. I just wanted to reiterate, you know? It's because of that is special.
And you have nothing going on, nothing exciting you want to share with the podcast.
No, but do you have something going on?
No, I don't. No. I'm actually
have no
I'm cat sitting for my buddy and his wife. I have to just make sure I have to feed the cat tonight and tomorrow.
Don't you just kind of...
And then I was going to go to the Ticats game. Might go to the Ticats game on tomorrow.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, because again, it's supposed to be beautiful, and you get a free media meal if you're a member of the media. So
wow.
One for the meal.
Okay.
Because I've been very cheap. Because I bought a car. I'm buying a car.
What car are you buying?
Well, I don't want to give them a free shout out. If they want to sponsor some of the payment of the car,
okay.
let's just say it's a new car. But if they want to sponsor, if they want to help me pay for it, then I'll mention it on air.
Oh, okay.
Okay, that'll be the deal.
All right, yeah.
If you're listening, person who sold me my car, if you want a shout out, you can take a couple bucks off the car. Yeah.
A couple bucks.
You're working on the Truth and Reconciliation story today, so I'll let you get back to that. Doing great work, I'm sure. But thanks for doing this, Manesa.
Thank you so much.
All right, my thanks to Manesa Dhanabalan for joining me today. My thanks to Matt Ingram, and my thanks to Emily Tayler as well. Mike Corson was the director of this podcast. My thanks to him. Bill did a great job with the graphics, as always. Thank you to him, and I'm pretty sure he rolled the prompter at the beginning. Make sure to like and subscribe to the Trending Now podcast. You can do that at chch.com/podcast or wherever you get your favorite podcast. Once again, thank you so much for tuning in. Make sure to like and subscribe so you never miss an episode. From all of us here at CHCH, I'm Louie Butko. Hoping you have a great weekend.